My mother let her friend take over my room that I was paying for, so I moved out, and she exposed me on Facebook, calling me selfish. But the moving video revealed the truth and left her destroyed. I'm 23 years old. I work as a freelancer from home. Well, I used to work from home until like 2 weeks ago. And honestly, I need to get this out because I'm still processing what happened and how my own mother basically chose her best friend over me when I was literally the one paying the bills. The thing is, I'm not one of those people who lives with their parents without contributing anything, you know? I paid rent, I paid bills, I bought my own food, and on top of that, I had all my work equipment set up in my room because I need a specific configuration for the projects I do. I work in graphic design and video editing, so I have computers, monitors, lights, microphones, all that stuff set up in my bedroom, which was basically my office and my personal space at the same time. I lived with my mom and my two siblings, a boy and a girl, both 15 years old. They're twins. The house is big, like 4 bedrooms, so there was enough space for everyone, and we'd never had space problems or anything like that. My mom has always been very close to her friends, especially Stephanie, who's been her best friend since college or something. They've known each other for like 30 years. I've known Stephanie my whole life. She's like an aunt to me, and her 2 kids are good kids. They're like 8 and 10 years old, something like that. We'd always gotten along well. They came to the house often. We had barbecues together, you know, the usual stuff. Everything started like 3 months ago when Stephanie was getting divorced. Her husband turned out to be a jerk. I don't know all the details, but basically the marriage exploded and she needed a temporary place while she found an apartment and sorted out all the legal stuff with the divorce. My mom, being the good friend she is, told her to come to our house with the kids while she got organized. And look, I was completely okay with that. It seemed like the right thing to do. Stephanie was going through a horrible time and needed support. We told her to stay in the guest room, which is on the first floor. It's a decent room with its own bathroom and everything, so it seemed like the perfect solution. The first few days were normal. I mean, a bit cramped because suddenly we were 3 adults and 4 kids in the house, but manageable. I kept working in my room. My siblings did their thing. Stephanie was looking for apartments and dealing with lawyers. Everything seemed to be going well. The plan was for them to stay maximum 1 month, maybe 2, until she found something. I even helped her look for places online. I'd send her links to apartments that looked good, tried to support however I could. But then, like 2 weeks in, I had to leave for 4 days to visit my grandmother who lives in another state. My grandmother isn't doing very well health-wise, and I wanted to spend time with her. So I let my mom know in advance. I paid my share of the rent for the month. I made sure it was in order before I left. When I left, my room was perfectly organized, all my equipment working, my things in their place. It was Thursday when I left, and I planned to return Sunday night. I got back Sunday around 9 at night. I was exhausted from the trip, and when I walked into the house, I immediately noticed something was off. There were toys in the living room that weren't there before, the kids' backpacks in the hallway, and I could hear voices upstairs, on the second floor where my bedroom is. I went up the stairs thinking maybe the kids were playing in the hallway or something. But when I got to my room and opened the door, I literally froze. Stephanie's 2 kids were in my room. They weren't visiting or playing for a bit, they were living there. They had their air mattresses on the floor, their toys everywhere, clothes in my closet, their school backpacks on my desk. And here comes the worst part. All my work equipment, my monitors, my work computer, my lights, everything, had been pushed into a corner and covered with sheets like it was trash they wanted to hide. My desk, where I have a setup that took me years to perfect, and that's literally worth thousands of dollars, was being used as a coloring table for the kids. There were crayons and markers everywhere. I stood in the doorway, unable to process what I was seeing. One of the kids saw me and said, "Hi, Hannah," like nothing. Like it was completely normal that they were living in my bedroom. I could only manage to say, "What's going on here?" "Where's my mom?" The kid told me she was downstairs with his mom. I went down the stairs so fast I almost tripped, found my mom and Stephanie in the kitchen drinking wine and laughing about something. I told them, "What's up? Why are the kids in my room? What happened to my stuff?" My mom looked at me like I was being dramatic and said, "Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. The kids needed more space and the guest room is too small for the 3 of them, so we moved them to your room because it's bigger." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I said, "Mom, that's my room. I pay for that room. I have all my work equipment there. How could you even think of moving them without asking me? And she, seriously, told me with the straightest face in the world, "It's my house, Hannah. I decide who sleeps where." Stephanie was sitting there saying nothing, looking at her wine glass like the conversation had nothing to do with her. I asked her, "And you're not going to say anything?" "Stephanie, do you really think it's okay for your kids to just take my room like that?" She just mumbled something like, "I'm sorry, Hannah, but we need the space. We need the space." As if I didn't need my space to work and live. I tried to stay calm. I really tried. I told my mom, "Okay, I understand they need more space, but that room is where I work. It's my source of income. You can't just disconnect all my equipment and move it like nothing." She told me it was temporary, that it would only be for a few more weeks until Stephanie found something. I told her they could put bunk beds in the guest room, that they could organize things differently, but she insisted that the kids were already settled in my room and that it would be very traumatic for them to move them again considering everything they were going through with their parents' divorce. I mean, seriously? And what about what I'm going through? I went up to my room, well, the room that was mine, and tried to move my stuff back, to at least recover my desk so I could work. The kids were there watching me, and one of them started crying, saying I was taking away his space. My mom came running up when she heard the crying and told me to stop making scenes, that the kids had been through enough and that I was being incredibly selfish. Selfish. Me. The one who paid rent religiously every month, who bought my own food, who helped with the bills, who had never been a problem. But sure, I was the selfish one for wanting my own space, that I was literally paying for. That night I slept on the couch because I had nowhere else. My siblings shared a room and there was no extra space there. The guest room was occupied by Stephanie, and my room was taken by her kids. The next morning, I tried to talk to my mom again, calmer, explaining that I needed access to my equipment because I had projects with deadlines, clients waiting, work commitments I couldn't ignore. She told me I could use my equipment when the kids were at school. When the kids were at school. So basically, she was giving me permission to use my own things that I bought with my money in the room that I was paying for, but only at certain hours. I tried it for 2 days. I'd wake up super early, wait for the kids to leave for school, go up to my room and try to work. But it was impossible. Everything was disorganized. My cables were disconnected and some were even lost. My software settings weren't working because they'd moved the computer without shutting it down properly. It was a disaster. By Wednesday, I'd already lost a client because I couldn't deliver a project on time. A client who paid me well, and who had been patient with me during the process, but who finally got tired of the excuses. And when I tried to explain the situation to my mom, she told me I was exaggerating, that I could work from the library or from a coffee shop, from a library. With all my editing equipment that needs like 3 monitors and specialized software, the woman clearly didn't understand anything about my work. Friday of that same week, I came home after trying to work from the coffee shop, which was a total failure because I couldn't even concentrate with all the noise, and found that they'd put a lock on my room door. A lock. I asked my mom what was up with that, and she told me the kids needed privacy and that Stephanie didn't want me going in whenever I wanted because it made them feel uncomfortable. I made them feel uncomfortable in my room. That's when something broke inside me. I don't know. I went straight to my mom and told her, "Look, this can't continue like this. Either Stephanie and her kids move out of my room this week, or I'm moving out of the house." I thought she was going to react, that she was going to realize how ridiculous the whole situation was. But you know what? She told me. She said, "Then leave. If you're going to be so immature and selfish about a room, when clearly Stephanie and her kids need more support than you do right now, then maybe it's better if you leave." I couldn't believe it. My own mother was basically kicking me out of the house where I was paying rent. That night I stayed at a friend's house, and the next day I started looking for rooms to rent. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to stay in a place where I clearly wasn't wanted or respected. In 2 days I found a place. It was a room in a shared house with 2 roommates. A bit more expensive than what I was paying at my mom's house, but it had a private bathroom and enough space for my work setup. I signed the contract on Tuesday, paid the deposit and first month's rent, and started planning the move. I let my mom know that same day, told her I was moving out on Saturday, and that I needed access to my room to pack my things. She got super defensive, saying I was being dramatic, that I was abandoning the family, that how could I leave them like that. I reminded her that she literally told me to leave, but according to her, that was just in the heat of the moment and she didn't mean it seriously. I asked her for the keys to the lock so I could go in and pack. She refused at first, saying she didn't want me to upset the kids. I had to threaten to call the police and explain that all my equipment in there was mine and that I needed access to my property for her to finally give me the key. Thursday night, when the kids were already asleep, I was able to go in and start organizing what I needed to take. The disaster I found was worse than I thought. Some of my cables were broken. There was juice spilled on my carpet. My external hard drives, which had years of work saved on them, were thrown on the floor like they were toys. One of my monitors had a crack that definitely wasn't there before. I took photos of everything, documented every damaged thing because I was already thinking I might need evidence later. I called 2 friends to help me with the move on Saturday. They arrived early with a van they rented, and we started taking all my stuff down. My mom was furious, screaming that I was being disrespectful, that how dare I do this, that Stephanie was going to feel terrible. Stephanie didn't even come out of her room. I guess she was embarrassed. My siblings helped me a bit carrying boxes. I think they understood that the situation was wrong even though they didn't say anything openly because they didn't want problems with my mom. One of my friends, bless him, recorded the whole process on video. Not because I asked him to, but because he saw how my mom was treating me and thought it would be good to have a record of everything just in case. And it turned out to be a brilliant decision because guess what happened next? I moved that same Saturday, set up all my equipment in my new room, and by Sunday I was working again. It was such a huge relief to have my own space again, to be able to work without interruptions, without having to ask permission to use my own things. My roommates are cool, they respect my space, and the house is quiet. For the first time in weeks, I was able to sleep well. On Monday, I got a message from my mom saying I owed her rent for the rest of the month. I reminded her that I had paid the full rent for that month before leaving for my trip, that technically she should give me money back for the days I wasn't going to be there anymore, but that I was willing to let it go. She insisted that I owed her money, because according to her, I had agreed to pay for the whole month and I had left before it was over. The thing is, I never agreed to stay if they were going to treat me like that, so I told her no, that I wasn't going to give her more money. Then, and this is what really pissed me off, my mom made a Facebook post, a long and dramatic post about how her daughter had abandoned her in a difficult time, how I was selfish and only thought about myself, how I had turned my back on the family when they needed me most. She painted the whole story like I was the villain, like I had left because I didn't want to help Stephanie, without mentioning at all that she had kicked me out of my own room that I was paying for. Several relatives and family friends started commenting, some defending me because they knew my version of the facts, others attacking me without knowing the full story. It was a total mess. My aunt, my mom's sister, called me to ask what had really happened because the post sounded weird to her. I told her everything, from the beginning, and she was quiet for a moment and then told me that my mom was completely out of line, that how could she even think of treating me like that when I had been helping financially in the house. Some of my friends who saw the post responded directly to my mom, telling her to stop the drama, that I had done the right thing by leaving. One of them even shared part of the moving video showing how my mom was yelling at me and treating me horribly, which definitely didn't help her look good. She eventually deleted the post, but the damage was already done. A bunch of people already knew the truth, and she looked pretty bad. It's been like 2 weeks since I moved out, and honestly, I'm much better. My work is back on track. I got back the client I had lost, and even got 2 new projects. My siblings text me often. They tell me the house is weird without me, that they miss when we did things together. I've invited them to come visit me, and they've come a couple of times, which is cool, because I don't want to lose my relationship with them over all this drama. My mom sent me a message a few days ago saying that Stephanie finally found an apartment and is moving out next week. She asked if I wanted to come back home. I replied no, that I'm good where I am, that I need my space and my independence. I think she expected me to say yes immediately, because then she sent me another message saying I was being resentful and that I should forgive and forget. But it's not about forgiving or forgetting. It's about respect. She didn't respect me when she made those decisions without consulting me. She didn't respect me when she minimized my work and my needs. She didn't respect me when she chose her friend's comfort over my well-being. And then she tried to paint me as the bad guy on social media to look good herself. That's not something that gets fixed with a simple, sorry, do I feel bad about leaving? Sometimes, when I think about my siblings and that I don't see them every day anymore. But do I regret doing it? Not at all. I had to set boundaries. I had to stand firm and say this isn't okay and I'm not going to tolerate it. And that's exactly what I did. Now I'm in a place where I'm respected, where I can work peacefully, where I don't have to be fighting for my own space that I'm paying for. And honestly, that's worth more than keeping the peace by pretending everything is fine when it clearly isn't.